Thank you very much for staying with us here on News Desk. Now, suspended national chairman of the new Patriotic Party, Paul Afoko, will address a news conference today on some controversial issues surrounding his removal. Now, if this conference happens, it will be Mr. Afoko's first ever formal public engagement since his woes began. Paul Afoko was suspended indefinitely after a unanimous decision by the National Executive Committee of the party on October 23, 2015, over allegations he was undermining party unity. A recent appeal against the NEC decision also fell on the rocks after the NPP's highest decision-making body, the National Council, upheld his indefinite suspension. Now, he has hinted he's heading to court to challenge his suspension, and that will be on Friday. But joining me in studio now is Malik Dabu of myjournline.com. He is the editor of myjournline.com. He joins me in studio now with some more on this particular issue. So, Malik, thank you very much for joining us. And interesting times, I'm told. And Mr. Afoko holding a press conference at this time, what could he possibly talk about?
Well, there are a number of things. To the extent that he has declared his intention to go to court, we should expect that he's going to come and try to appeal to the public. Remember that when these things happen, members of the party have spoken a lot. We haven't heard from himself.
Yes, we have.
Of course, his spokesperson has consistently issued statements, but he himself wants to speak now. I believe what he'll be seeking to do is to try and correct what he would term reports on his matter. We know that the petitioner spoke, at least Alhaji Sule Yeremia, one of the petitioners whose petition led to his suspension, the recommendation of the disciplinary committee of the party, which was endorsed by the National Executive Committee and upheld by the National Council, the highest decision-making body when the party is out of Congress, but second highest generally. The petitioners have spoken, the party spokespersons have spoken, Nana Kumi and others have spoken, lawyers have spoken. He himself hasn't spoken. What I expect him to do today is to try and straighten up things that he thinks didn't go well. He will try and appeal to some support base that he may still have within the party. That may not be very substantial, but he, of course, still has some following in the party. What he will seek to do is to try and consolidate that support base, because he doesn't want to completely and entirely lose out in the battle. He will try and appease some of those people. He will try to make the point that the allegations that he is working and he's trying to engineer the defeat of the party at next year's election are unfounded, are untrue, and they are baseless. He certainly will try to do that. Members of the party thought that at this press conference, he would come in and say, I love the NPP. That was why I put myself up for elections. I differed in opinion with some members of the leadership of the party. In the interest of the party, I am going to let the issues stay. I will not challenge this decision at the High Court as I intended. It doesn't appear to me that will happen, because he believes that he has rights, and he does have rights. He wants to assert those rights. When one of the party members went to court on these matters, the case was thrown out primarily because, one, the judge said that the person who brought the matter didn't demonstrate sufficiently that he was acting as an agent of Mr. Afoko. And secondly, he did not exhaust all the internal mechanisms laid down in the party's constitution. Now that has happened, he appealed to the National Council. The National Council endorsed his suspension. Now when he goes to court, he would tell the court, I have exhausted all the internal mechanisms. The party's constitution says, when I exhaust all the internal mechanisms and I do not get redress and I do not have my issues properly addressed, I'm entitled to bring a matter before the court for an impartial judge to listen to my argument, read the NPP's constitution, and make a determination whether I have a case at all. So he's going to court. He certainly has a more strengthened stand now than he did previously, because previously he didn't exhaust the internal mechanism. Now he has done that, so he can make a forceful argument in court.
So as things stand now, is it a case of a dying man willing to hold on to anything and everything, trying to bring down everybody or probably collapse the party like some are suggesting?
A dying man trying to collapse the NPP, I don't know. Some members of the party certainly believe that. A sizable number of the NPP believes that he's deliberately trying to engineer the party's defeat. He, of course, disagrees. He thinks that he's certainly trying to assert his right. Rights guaranteed under the Constitution, both the Constitution of the NPP,
anyway,
of course, and the National Constitution. So all he's doing, he's not violating any law. He's simply trying to assert his right, and he's entitled to do so.
And tell me about this counter press conference by the party, and I'm told it's going to be chaired by the acting party chairman, Freddie Blay.
Yes, I mean, the party has sent out communication to media houses saying it is holding a press conference. It will not say a counter press conference, but we do know that it's a counter press conference because we didn't know about this press conference until today. We knew about Paul Afoko's press conference since yesterday. We do know that yesterday approaches were made to media houses to try and pick the feed live. So many media houses will be picking the feed live from Afoko's press conference.
Including ourselves. And I must say at this point that we have to cross over now and get to the physicians and surgeons office and get some live feed from there. We are told Mr. Paul Afoko is just about addressing the media.
And good morning, all of you. I'm glad to see that you're all here. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, I thank you for coming. I've invited you here today to share my concerns regarding some recent developments in our dear party, the new Patriotic Party. The destiny of our great party is threatened by the flagrant disregard for the party's constitution, and this emerging trend of blatant constitutional breaches and illegalities is alarming. As you will all recall, on Sunday, April 13th, 2014, I swore an oath at the National Delegates Congress in Tamale to defend and uphold the constitution of the party to over 5,000 delegates, members, and supporters of this great party of ours. And this is exactly what I intend to do. I will keep my oath. I have watched my party slide down the slippery slope towards destruction. Our party is in danger of shredding its democratic credentials. It started with intimidation, insults, and abuse on air, targeted at literally everybody. Physical attacks, and now intolerance of freedom of speech and dissent. And of late, killings. In the last months, some members of our party have taken steps that are in clear breach of the constitution of our party. As you can all recall, on October 23rd, 2015, an illegal National Executive Committee issued a statement purporting to have suspended the national chairman of the party. The processes adopted were illegal. Our party's constitution clearly provides the legal processes for the removal of constituency, regional, and national officers as follows. In the case of a complaint against a member of the National Executive Committee, the complaint is sent to the National Council. The National Council then refers the complaint to the National Disciplinary Committee. The National Disciplinary Committee then investigates and sends its recommendations back to the National Council. If the matter relates to the removal of an elected national officer, then Article 10, clauses 1 to 5 apply. The import of these clauses is as follows. If members wish to remove an elected officer, they must get at least 40% of the delegates. I repeat. If the matter relates to the removal of an elected national officer, then Article 10, clauses 1 to 5 apply. The import of these clauses is as follows. If members wish to remove an elected officer, they must get at least 40% of the delegates that elected that officer to petition to remove that officer. The affected officer will be given the opportunity to appear before a committee set by the National Council, a committee set by the National Council. The National Council may then suspend the officer before subsequently an extraordinary delegates conference is convened to deliberate and decide on the matter. I repeat for emphasis, the National Council may suspend the officer before subsequently an extraordinary delegates conference is convened to deliberate and decide on the matter. This is the only time an officer of the party can be suspended. This is the only time, as stated in our Constitution. And even then, when suspension is invoked, it should not exceed 1 month. Therefore, an indefinite suspension of an elected officer is tantamount to a removal of that officer. If the decision borders on removal and the person is an appointed National Executive Committee member, then Article 10(6) applies. Mark the distinction. An elected officer, 40% of the delegates who elected that officer must sign a petition with a view to removing the officer. And when that happens, a committee of the National Council then meets to deliberate and decide. And they may, the only time in our Constitution that they talk of an elected national officer being suspended, they may then suspend that officer, but only for 4 weeks, 1 month. And in that 4 weeks, they must have a national delegates conference to reassemble the owners of the party, to reassemble the owners of a party at the Congress. And at that Congress, the Constitution goes on to stipulate what is required. The distinction I said you should be aware of is that this is different from when that national officer is an appointed officer. We have elected national officers and appointed national officers. And for appointed national officers, Article 10(6) applies. Contrary to the constitutional requirements, regrettably, a few of our members, bent on overturning the decision of the party in Tamale, perpetrated the following. 1. Baseless petitions, I repeat, baseless petitions, were sent directly to the National Disciplinary Committee by the Council of Elders, and 2 separate others from individual members of the same Council of Elders. 2. The Disciplinary Committee without any referral from the National Council, illegally invoked its own jurisdiction. What makes this worse is that some members of the Council of Elders, from which the complaint emanated against me, are also members of the disciplinary committee. Under the rules of natural justice, some of the members of the National Disciplinary Committee are precluded from determining the substantive complaint against the national chairman, as these members will be both petitioners and judges in their own case. I must repeat this for emphasis. You have a National Council of Elders that has not got the jurisdiction to even refer a national officer to the disciplinary committee. This Council of Elders, when it is pointed out to them that what they have done is wrong, then they quickly pick two of their members, and give them the same petition to go and petition the disciplinary committee, once again cutting out the National Council. I hope I am making myself clear. So the same persons have petitioned, run quickly around to the other side of the table, sat down and said, Afoko, come, let's give you justice. Now, the disciplinary committee, without ruling on my legal objections, as stated earlier, which I have taken pains to explain to you, proceeded to recommend my suspension. Further compounding the breaches of the Constitution, the disciplinary committee sent their recommendations to the National Executive Committee via the National Affairs Vice Chairman and recommended that he convene and chair. Recommended that he convene and chair an emergency National Executive Committee meeting to consider their recommendations, even though I, the national chairman, was in the jurisdiction, willing, able, and ready to convene such a meeting. And I wish to put it on record that I received no such documents or invitation from the disciplinary committee. All these are contrary to Article 96 DII, which states the national chairperson shall be the convener of all the meetings of the National Delegates Conference, the National Council, the National Executive Committee, and the Steering Committee. This is what that article states. The National Affairs Vice Chairman then went ahead to further breach the Constitution by hastily convening and chairing an illegal National Executive Committee meeting, despite my pointing out and cautioning them about the illegality. This illegal National Executive Committee meeting adopted the illegal recommendations of the disciplinary committee. Following the rules and procedures laid down by the Constitution, I appealed against these illegalities to the National Council, and that was what my appeal was about. The first Vice Chairman, in further breach of our Constitution, went ahead and convened another illegal National Council meeting, when, according to the Constitution and Convention, I should convene and recuse myself where the matter concerns me. Instead of the National Council deciding on the legal objections that I raised, they rather went ahead and affirmed the illegal decision of an illegal National Executive Committee meeting in an apparent coercive manner. Ladies and gentlemen, and especially to the owners of the party out there. The owners are the people sitting in their various constituencies. They are the owners of this party. And I'm saying that not for the first time. I have said that when I went around all the 275 constituencies of Ghana. I stated it in every constituency that they should understand that they are the owners of the party. I wish to state now that the decision to suspend me is unconstitutional. The National Discipline Committee does not have jurisdiction to determine a matter with the effect of suspending indefinitely an elected party officer from office, contrary to Article 10 of our Constitution, which focuses on the removal of elected party officers. This is also a clear breach of the rules of natural justice and of the provisions of Article 4(5)(b). Emboldened by these unconstitutional actions, regional executive committees have subsequently suspended 21, I repeat, 21 constituency and regional officers who questioned the wisdom of a party built on democratic principles and the rule of law, taking such contrary actions. 21 officers have been suspended just for daring to disagree, and for good reason which I will enter into later. The question now, though, is who will be next? And when will this end? This is arbitrary and unlawful. All of these unconstitutional acts constitute a substantial threat to our vision of development and freedom. It is a threat to the freedom of conscience, association, expression, and it constitutes a clear and present danger to our party's values. It is illogical to suspend officers who are supposed to work to win elections. For instance, we have no parliamentarians in the Volta region or in the Upper West region. And we need all our executives to be on the ground working to ensure we win both the 2016 presidential and parliamentary elections. Such actions constitute an attack on the party's fortunes. I'll give you one example out of the many. We have an officer of the party who has been suspended, who also happens to be an assemblyman, won 2 elections in an area that we will call the stronghold of our opponents. This person has been able to convince his fellow constituents to vote for him to be the assemblyman of the area. And this is in the Volta region. And that person has continued now to be our secretary, organizer, and he's known. This person is meant to go out to recruit people to our cause to help us win 2016, and you go and suspend this person for coming to Accra just to present a petition peacefully. I say unless urgent action is taken to stop these gross illegalities, I am filled with foreboding for the future of our party. The outcome of the vote at the illegal National Council meeting following my petition was not in the least surprising. All those who voted at the council meeting worked against my candidature. Their opposition, machinations notwithstanding, the National Delegates Conference, the highest decision-making body of the party, bought into my message of the new plan for power and gave me their mandate to serve them as our party's national chairman. I am eternally grateful for this courageous decision by the party delegates. Our party is known to believe in the rule of law. We used to be the embodiment of a truly democratic party. As such, the unfortunate developments permeating our party today call for great concern. All well-meaning members and lovers of the party, and indeed lovers of democracy, must rise up and save our party's democracy from these illegal acts that are alien to our tradition. At this point, I can't help but reflect on a very recent statement, less than a week ago, from the Christian Council of Ghana, portions of which I quote as follows. And as I quote those portions, please, I ask the party, especially the owners of the party out there, to reflect on these words from the Christian Council of Ghana. 1, they say, and I'm quoting, our politicians must demonstrate their strength and influence by their ability to dialogue and engage others based on ideas rather than mobilizing people to insult, attack, and to some extent kill in their quest to exert their authority. Does this ring a bell? I continue the quotation. The use of coercion by some politicians to have their way on matters that are not in their favor is extremely frightening. It is now obvious that people who challenge those who are perceived to be untouchable within the political circles are not safe. I continue the quotation from the Christian Council of Ghana less than a week ago. This is gradually creating a culture of silence and fear in our body politic, and it is dangerous for our democracy. I close. Ladies and gentlemen, these statements speak to what, in my view, is happening in our party today. Because of the actions of some individuals within our party, the perception is being created that a culture of silence and fear is permeating our body politic. The conclusions I will draw from all that I've been saying to you is simple, and I would want you to listen to this carefully. In my moments of reflection during these difficult times, I can't help but ponder over these thought-provoking questions that I read years ago and which I find appropriate at this time. And those words are: vanity will ask the question, is it popular? Vanity will ask, is it popular? Is what I'm doing popular? Is what you are doing popular? Vanity will ask that question. And cowardice will ask, is it safe? Is it safe for me to speak? Because if I speak, I'll get suspended. Or if I speak, I'll get killed. Or if I speak, they will deploy people on radio to insult me. Cowardice will ask, is it safe? And expedience will ask, is it politically correct? Is it politically correct? If it is not politically correct, then I should shut up. But then conscience will, however, ask, is it right? Is it right? I shall follow my conscience and do what is right. And I tell you this, I'm diverting from my script. The late Alhaji Ali Umahama, may he rest in peace.
Well, so that was a live transmission of that particular press conference by embattled NPP chair Paul Awuntemi Afoko, addressing quite a number of issues happening in his party, the NPP. He's raised quite a number of issues, which we will be bringing to you subsequently in the course of the day. But time now for us to wrap up on News Desk, and do know that up next is Joy News Interactive with me, Akofi Smart Habit.